Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Megsie, and today I will be doing a quick sort of overview of my reading year for 2024. I read a total of 49 books this year, which is actually more than I think I have ever read before. And I'm just going to be going down through some statistics and also sharing my top 11 favorite books that I read the year. So we will get started. Like I said, I read a total of 49 books. 42 of those were fiction and 7 of those were nonfiction. I primarily read literary fiction. I counted about like 28 books that would count as literary fiction. 8 were historical fiction, 2 were science fiction, 2 were considered probably erotica or erotica adjacent, 5 were horror or horror adjacent, and 3 had sort of fantasy-esque elements. And again, some of these books just cross multiple genres, so I know that all of these I'm not probably accounting for every book here. 12 of the books I read were short story or essay collections. 36 of the books I read were by women, and 13 were by men. Now, breaking it down by background, I read a total of about 19 books by European descended authors, 11 by Middle Eastern descended authors, 8 were of East Asian or South Asian descent, 6 were African American, 2 were Latino, 2 were Australian Aboriginal, and 1 was Native American. 17 of the books I either purchased and have physical copies of, or they were gifted to me, including gift cards. 16 were borrowed, I should say, from the library, and 12 of those books were from little lending libraries in the neighborhood. 3 were from my own personal collection that I reread and then subsequently gave 2 of those away, and then 1 was just a proofreading job. So the next half of the video, I will talk about the books that I would rate 5 to 4.5 stars. It's hard to really rate books because, I don't know, I feel like these kind of can change and shift. And sometimes when you read a book, you might rate it higher than when you come back to it and think about it 6 months later. So, books I really enjoyed that were highlights throughout the year. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is very much a satire of the modern publishing industry and has a sort of thriller element. It's very meta. It deals a lot with the whole process of writing and who is allowed to tell stories and who isn't, and is a pretty good expose of sort of like liberal racism, how that manifests itself, particularly within publishing. I also really enjoyed Bunny by Mona Awad, which is just an absurd book about a woman who is in a creative writing program, getting her MFA, and she encounters this clique of 4 women who she's drawn into their little culty clique that you're not sure, is this actually fantasy horror or is the main character losing her grip on reality? A Person of Interest by Susan Choi. This takes from Ted Kaczynski and Wen Ho Lee. It's definitely, reading it is very, she uses a lot of big words, a lot of big vocabulary, but I really enjoyed being challenged, and her writing at times can remind me like a tiny bit of Don DeLillo, if you know what I mean. Really, really great writing. Like I said, one of my favorites. The 100 Years War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. Also really good. This is nonfiction. It's a pretty good overview if you don't understand anything about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and want to understand the Palestinian side. I hate to say side, but really understand just the war, the 100 Years War against Palestinians from 1917, the Balfour Declaration, and on. The Coin by Yasmin Zaher. This is another sort of Palestinian-themed novel. Well, the other one was not a novel, but this is really fascinating about a Palestinian woman moving to New York and her kind of unraveling. I clearly like books about women unraveling, but there's so many themes in this very, very brief book that were so, to me, fascinating and compelling, and things I don't really care, from American exceptionalism to survivor guilt to cleaning OCD, Arab identity, race, all that stuff, blurry lines. Definitely really enjoyed, and I can't wait to read more of this author's work. Ta-Nehisi Coates, another person that, I mean, I read him before, but the message really top notch. He got a lot of stuff for this. Another Palestinian themed book. The last essay is about his visit to Palestine and sort of like coming to terms with what is and has been happening there. And then, but he also talks a lot about, he has two other essays too, and basically it's like the power of messages and storytelling, and what are the myths, and what do we tell ourselves, and how can that hi hello how can that impact our future for a better world, and why are books banned? Because people don't want people to really think, they just want them to recite. So some other books that I enjoyed that I would rate 4.5 stars. Those were like my top. I put them as 5 stars on Goodreads, but some others I really enjoyed. The End of the Story by Lydia Davis. Again, a sort of meta novel on writing, particularly writing creative, not quite creative nonfiction, but how does one encapsulate like your lived experience and kind of fictionalize it. And it's sort of about like the whole her the narrator's relationship with a younger man when she was a professor in grad school, and their relationship and then subsequent breakup. And she doesn't treat him well, and she acts like a stalker when they break up. If you're really interested in the craft of writing and memory and how our memory always alters things every time we retrieve a memory, I really enjoyed this. Another book I really liked was Airplane Mode by Shanaz Habib. This is also a nonfiction book. This really was a really good like examination of the travel industry, past and present, and how it was sort of like an outpost of, or an outgrowth, you could say, of colonialism. I mean, this also like kind of mirrors a little bit of like the message and sort of how like what are these like stories that we tell ourselves, and how even it talks about like how history is told, an idea of like exploring a place. It's definitely sort of like a post-colonial, decolonial kind of text, but in a way that's very accessible. And there's certain things I did not know that I learned through this piece. Another book I also really enjoyed was Quicksand by Nella Larson. I really am disappointed that I cannot read any more by Nella Larson because she only published 2 novels, and the 2 novels, this was one, the other is Passing, I really liked. Basically, a young biracial woman in the 1920s who moves around from the South to Chicago to New York City, Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance, to Copenhagen, to back again to New York, and she's just never satisfied in her life. The thing I love about Nella Larson's writing is that even though she wrote in the 20s, it feels so modern. There's something so modern and accessible in her writing, and I just find that I can relate to her character so well. And it's crazy to me. Like she was so ahead of her time. Like I said, I really wish that she had written more, because she only has like 2 really short novels that were published. Also, another last book I think I have yet to mention, Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman. I haven't read anything like this, and this was really fascinating. It starts out your typical colonial story about the colonization of Australia, but then it switches into this alien sci-fi kind of story, and I thought that was really clever and really well done, and definitely enjoy. Hi. So, editing me here, I realized that I actually forgot a book that was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I would rate this about 4.5 stars, and definitely was one of my favorites. I reviewed this in October. This is about 2 sisters living in the South in the 1960s, and one ends up passing as white and completely cuts out her black family and the her sister's daughter ends up trying to track her down. And it deals a lot with what it was like to step over the color line in mid 20th century America for light skinned passing African Americans. And I definitely thought that this book was worth the hype. Here are some other interesting stats from Goodreads. The longest book I read was The Parisian by Isabella Hamad. It is 576 pages. It took me a while to get into this book. It took me about, I think I was reading it for roughly a month or so, and then I just put it down, and then I came back to it. And then the shortest book I read was Earthrise by Leonard S. Marcus, the story of a photograph that changed the way we see our planet. 160 pages, very short. It's yet to be published. The average book length I read was 299 pages. That seems very short. The most shelved book that I read was The Picture of Dorian Gray. Well, that makes sense. It was written in the 1890s, so that understands why people read it the most, and it's considered a classic. My average rating was 3.6 stars. Okay, that is interesting. Get that general, stats. Okay. The graphic, okay, from 2024 that has, like I said, I'm going to put it right here. So you can see that we'll go down to the bottom. This is the worst books I read, the worst books I rated, 2 to 1 star or 1.5 stars. If I could do half a star on Goodreads. My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. I don't really mess with Otessa Moshfegh. I don't like her writing. I bashed her in my very first video. I'm so sorry. I don't feel compelled to really read her again. Maybe I will. But I don't understand the hype. I'm sorry. Nah. It very much gives me female Bret Easton Ellis. And again, I'm just not a fan of his writing. That sort of like satirical edgelord trying to be edgy. Like it gives me like anti-SJW vibes from 2016. Not for me. The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. I don't understand why this is so popular. I guess it's because people just don't have taste. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but like this is so poorly written. It's just, I think in general why books are popular sometimes isn't because they're good, it's just because they're accessible. And yeah, the book is definitely a page turner, but the ending is so bad. It is so undeserved. This would not have flown in any creative writing workshop. This would not even have flown in a freaking creative writing workshop I took in undergrad. I saw like a giant like display of this when I just went to Barnes and Noble, like in hardcover with these like blood splattered pages. I was like, what? I'm sorry, no. I don't really mess with like commercial fiction. I'm sorry, I'm too much of a snob. Rouge by Mona Awad, that was also pretty bad. I do generally like Mona Awad. I read 2 of her novels this year, but this was just the absolute worst. The writing was very poor. It was very poor, and the themes she was trying to do have been done so many times. There was nothing new that was added. It was just very on the nose. And like I said, the writing was atrocious. It was like very much a rough draft. And again, I'm being very hard because I think Mona Awad does have talent, but she does need to kind of like she'll change like settings and stuff like that, but like it's kind of the same thing she's been doing for her past 3 novels, and I think she needs to do something a little different. And then The Rules Do Not Apply by Ariel Levy. This woman just annoyed me so much throughout her memoir. She was just so unlikable, so privileged, not aware of her privilege, really terrible to her partner, just very, very thinking that like she was deserving, and very bad takes on feminism. Her feminism is very shallow. I just not vibe with this book at all. And then the worst book I read was Anna Eastman's Delta of Venus. This was just truly awful. I was not aware of like all of the very nasty erotica stuff that was in here. Erotica, like child SA and incest and pedophilia and female genital mutilation and necrophilia and all the stuff that was supposed to be sexy and was just truly atrocious and No, this is not sexy. So those are the worst books I read of the year. They would get 1.5, or 2 stars from me. So yeah, that is a wrap up of all of the books, the stats, the breakdown, my favorites, my least favorites of the year of 2024. Now, granted, I have read so much more this year than I have read in a long, long time. And technically, I didn't even finish reading anything in January and February of last year because I was more interested in watching TV. So I hope I will have a much more prolific writing year and, reading and writing year, and booktube year. And yeah, that's about it. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.